Hello everybody, welcome back to Kanga TV, home of North Melbourne fans, and welcome to the round 3 review. North Melbourne going down by 6 goals to Adelaide at Adelaide Oval. Unfortunately, could not get that historic first win this afternoon. The final score 17-12, 114 to 12-6, 78. A very frustrating afternoon I felt at Adelaide Oval, and I think this has really been a story of a lot of our season so far. I feel like we have been dictating a lot of how our season has played out so far, and I think if you were to look 12 months ago and think you go to Adelaide Oval, the Crows have been in white hot form the past 2 weeks to start the season, you probably think, oh yeah, 6 goals, you kind of cop it on the chin and you take it. But in the game today, and in the way the game unfolded, 6 goals probably feels about right on reflection, but I did struggle for a while thinking, should we have been closer? Should we have been blown out by more? But we once again were probably our own worst enemy today. And credit to the Crows, because I think there was a lot of play on their behalf. Their pressure was excellent, and I think they forced a lot of errors for us. But as a North supporter looking at the game today, a lot of really sloppy errors and a lot of uncharacteristic errors from some players at some times, and it just felt like last week it was a real united front and a real team effort, and this week it just felt like there was way too many passengers. And when the likes of Shees, and there seems to be something wrong with Harry Sheezel, I don't know if he's injured, I don't know if he's just struggling to readjust to a new position on the ground, but he has had a pretty underwhelming start to the season. LDU was very quiet today. Luke Parker's tackling work was excellent, and I thought he was pretty good, but didn't see a lot of the ball today. Tom Powell was quiet. When you've got a lot of your biggest names struggling to fire, it's hard to see how you're going to be able to win the game out of the middle and then go on to kick a winning score. So frustrating definitely is the word that I feel at the moment on reflection on today's game, and just feeling it's a good problem to have at the same time, because it's not like we were blown out of the water. I feel like Adelaide really blew St Kilda out of the water in round 1 and really blew Essendon out of the water last weekend, where they didn't do that to us. It was just us making silly mistakes and Adelaide being able to capitalise so well on those mistakes that ultimately spelt the end for us. And they just were a lot smarter and a lot cleaner with the ball. Their structure just looked to be a lot more sound than us. And I think there was a lot of questions that came out of today's game for me that I'm really looking forward to seeing how it unfolds during the week, and then what we end up doing at selection table and how we back it up. Now we've got 6 days before we face Sydney under the roof at Marvel on Saturday night. So there's a lot to go through. So let's just get straight into it. I want to start with the Crows, and I just want to give them credit where credit's due, because we're North Melbourne supporters. We watch all games with a North Melbourne lens, obviously. And so we didn't feel like we were on our A game today, but I think a lot of where the game was won came off the back of the Crows' pressure. They had a tackle count of 58 to North's 47 to finish out the game. They were able to score over 10 goals on the back of turnovers, which is just outrageous. And then when they did enter their forward 50, they had a scoring efficiency of 58.2%. I mean, that is more than half of their entries resulted in scores, and there were patches there where they missed 2 or 3 goals at once, and that easily could have blown out to 10 goals. So credit where credit's due to the Crows. I thought that while we didn't disgrace ourselves today, I think we were the reason why the margin was that big, but I also feel like it probably could have been bigger. So maybe sitting at a 6-goal margin feels about right for this game. I also think the Crows, they battled well through injury. Josh Rochelle went off halfway through the second quarter with injury. I think there was a couple others who, maybe Peatling and Isaac Cummings as well. I think a couple of them at some point were also on the bench. So they really did dig deep, and they do have this 3-headed monster up forward. I mean, they've got Riley Thilthorpe, and I want to talk about him specifically because I think his role today was something that we could be lacking and something that maybe we'll need to look to bring in next week. But Riley Thilthorpe contributed on the scoreboard, Tex Walker on the scoreboard. I thought Darcy Fogarty, he did contribute well on the scoreboard, but a lot of his goals came from cheap kicks over the top when we were exposed one out. I thought Luke McDonald and Charlie Comben combined to cover Darcy Fogarty really well. I thought Chom was quite good again in the air today. I thought Luke McDonald's performance was excellent. I think he's had an excellent start to the year, and we'll get to him as well. But Riley Thilthorpe and his role today is something that Corey McKernan spoke about a lot on our live stream, and thank you so much to everyone who did join in and watched the game with us. But Riley presented very, very high up the ground, and the Crows do have so many dangerous forwards, tall forwards, that they are able to let someone run up the ground and be part of the link in chain as they move the ball up the ground to their attacking part of the ground. And then you've always got a Tex Walker, Dan Curtin, Isaac Rankin. I mean, he didn't have as much of an impact on the score, but he's very dangerous in the middle of the ground. They've always got an option. Whereas for us at times, and Tristan Sherry, I feel like spent more time resting today than traditionally, given that hamstring concern early on in the game, probably forced Jack Darling into the ruck a lot more. And then we weren't able to maybe execute and use Darling as that higher half forward and pushing up to ground to present higher up the ground as a marking option. So then when we went into our forward 50, either Larkey had pushed up and he'd taken it upon himself to do that, or it's a Paul Curtis or a Cam Zoha who aren't tall enough to be that option. So I feel like it was a little bit tricky for us to maybe execute our game plan the way we wanted to today. And on the flip side, Thilthorpe did look so dangerous when he presented at the ball. So in an ideal world, Sherry is taking 90% of the ruck load, and then it's Darling who's pushing up forward, and then he's delivering the ball to a Larkey or to a Curtis or to a Zoha. But unfortunately today, like I said just before, Tristan Sherry, very early on in the game, had a bit of a hamstring complaint, and that seemed to stick with him for most of the game. It felt like Darling carried a lot more of the ruck than he probably would have wanted to, and he looked like he was quite tired, and it looked like it could kind of wore him down a little bit. So we've opted to go for Darling pinch hitting in the ruck to give us a little bit more flexibility through our forward and mid rotation. It allows us to play Constanti and Robert Hansen Jr. One is a more attacking, higher, small forward that Robert Hansen Jr. has been playing. Didn't really have the impact today that he has had in the past 2 weeks. Constanti, I thought, was excellent today, and he's been the biggest surprise packet for me in season 2025. I didn't expect him to be as good as he has been, and not only has he been able to contribute defensively but also attackingly. He kicked 1 goal last week, chipped in with 2 goals this week. Hansen Jr., I don't think he's hit the scoreboard so far this season, so I feel like potentially Constanti is being a lot more dimensional. He's kind of got 2, 3, 4 dimensions to him rather than just being a lockdown defensive small forward. And so potentially him being able to be a little bit more dynamic and having a few different assets in his game, maybe then it allows us to look at the likes of a Bryn Teakle, or maybe look to debut Finbar Maley and potentially have a slightly more tall, more potent forward line. We know the forward line is functioning so well at the moment. I'd really hate to disrupt the way it's working. And I think it did still work today, and we were able to have a spread of goal kickers, and we do look quite dangerous when we go up forward, but potentially it's tweaking that a little bit. We go for a 3-prong forward line as opposed to a 2-prong forward line, and rather than relying on Darling so heavily to pinch hit, let Darling stay forward for majority of the game, and then you either look to a Teakle or a Maley to take that forward ruck role. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what we do next week. I'm really looking forward to seeing if that change is made. I also don't know what's going to happen with Tristan Sherry. Like I said, he kind of looked like he was a bit ginger for a lot of the game today. He did come back onto the ground after he had his hamstring looked at. He did finish out the game. It definitely wasn't one of his more dominant displays. He was good, he was solid, and we as a unit looked a lot better when he was on the field. We just looked a lot more balanced, but I just don't think Darling needs to be shouldering such a ruck load like he is either. And like I said, it was maybe unfortunate Sherry did get injured early on in the first quarter, and then we were unable to use him to his full capacity. But Darling should not be leaving the forward line or that forward part of the ground, I don't think, for majority of the game. So maybe we need to go back to the drawing board. Maley has been teased. He was part of the extended bench today for this week's game, I should say, and maybe we look to bring him in next week, or maybe we do look to bring Teakle and we try something a little bit different. It's not to say it's not working, but you can see the flaw in the game. Maybe we are too small small. We are already undersized down back as well, so maybe we are a little bit too small heading into this, and maybe under the roof at Marvel. The conditions were very windy down there today, Adelaide Oval, I believe on ground level, particularly in the second half of the game, it seemed like the conditions were a little bit windy. So maybe under the roof at Marvel, it might look a little bit different. We have played both of our first 2 games at Marvel as well, so it's our first time we were out in the open. So let's just see what happens. But I think Jack Darling fought well in the ruck when he needed to, but he definitely looked gassed by the end of the game, so I think maybe it's something we need to rethink. I thought our defense as a team was pretty good today. I thought our backline did fight really well, and we did get within a kick of the Crows a couple of times in the third quarter, but it just kind of felt like they were always a step ahead, and it kind of felt like they always were able to find an easy avenue to goal and kind of poke holes in our defense. Now, like I've mentioned before, they've got a very dynamic forward line, a very tall forward line. I think that Core did his best, and I think he fought really, really well. I mentioned the 1-2 punch of Luke McDonald and Charlie Comben. Thought both of them individually played really well. I was so impressed with Luke McDonald's game, and I think that the solo captaincy has really suited both he and Jai. I thought Jai was, again, one of our best today. He's really keen to set the tone early. He's really keen to get involved. I thought in the fourth quarter when the game was probably on the line and there was an opportunity for us to kind of will our way back into the game, he was a leader of the charge for sure. I really like Toby Pink's game as well, and I think he's really improved. I think maybe at times he was treated like a meme almost at some points last year, and people might have thought, what's he doing in the side? He's kind of just there, played that defensive forward role a little bit in the back half of last year and was there for structural purposes. But I actually think he's got really fit over the summer. He's really in good shape, and I think the last 2 weeks he has played very, very well. Yes, a couple of mistakes, a couple of turnovers here and there, and that happens when you are under siege, and our backline, as we know, has been under siege for a very long period of time. But I did think he was really, really good. And if Griffin Logue is fit and does come back into the side next week, he's unfortunately the one that makes way, but he doesn't deserve to be the one that makes way. I think he's played really, really well. So maybe, again, is that the option? Does he go forward rather and then Griffin Logue stays down back? I don't know what the answer is there. It'd just be a shame. We do need Griffin to play if he's fit. He definitely makes a big, big difference one-on-one. But Toby Pink's been impressive in the past couple of weeks. I think it'd be a real shame for him to be the one to make way. Caleb Daniel, I thought, had an interesting game, had a lot of the footy and seemed to dispose of it quite well, but I felt like he struggled to have an impact and did turn it over quite a bit. And you can't be doing that coming off half back. He maybe needs some support. So whether that support comes from the likes of a Riley Hardiman, who was also on the extended interchange bench this week, I don't know. Fino Sullivan, I thought was pretty quiet for the first 3 quarters, but then when he was moved up the ground and moved into the middle of the ground, he looked unstoppable. He looked really, really good. He was so strong. He was spinning out of traffic, left, right, and centre. He really made a difference. Probably needed to work on his disposal slightly, and his disposal when he's coming out of defence as opposed to when he was moved into the midfield. I think there was a little bit of a difference there. I felt like it was a little bit sloppier when he was moved into the midfield, but the boy can move and he can play, and he's usually a lot more composed coming off half back. It's going to be really interesting to see which way we take it. I would have thought Zach Fisher has had a very, very strong couple of weeks in the VFL, and he, for me, would have been someone I would have been looking at to bring back into the side. Darcy Tucker's played well, but maybe to replace Darcy Tucker as that second attacking defender. However, I believe he was concussed in the VFL over the weekend, so I don't think he'll be eligible for selection next week. So like I said, maybe it gives Hardiman an opportunity. I don't know which way we go. I think there's definitely, last week going into this week's game, I wouldn't have made changes. Going into the game against the Swans, I think there's definitely room for improvement. I think there's definitely bits and pieces that we can refine and change. Maybe Hansen Jr. subbed out of this game potentially makes way. I don't know. And I don't know how many changes we want to make this week as well. There's a lot of questions, I think, that have come from me out of this game more than answers. I think overall the backline did hold up as best as they could, but when you are under that much pressure and you aren't really getting a lot of assistance from the midfield the same way you were last week, maybe then that's when you become vulnerable. And so it is going to be interesting to see what the mix looks like. I would definitely avoid making too many changes because you want to allow the team a bit of continuity and you want to allow them to gel. And I have said this a few times, especially that backline that's had so many players rotating through it over the past 12 months. But there definitely is room for improvement and probably room for change if we wanted to pull a trigger. As I mentioned before, I felt like too many of our best ball users were missing. I don't know what's going on with Harry Sheezel. I would love, if there's something going on behind the scenes, I would love the club to just come out and say something and be honest and open about it. We don't need details. We just need to know that maybe something is off. He hasn't looked 100%, and I do hope that if it's injury or if it's something going on behind the scenes, that he's okay and that we can just get him back to his best so that we can have him impacting the side. I think you really do notice a big hole that needs to be filled when he was down. LDU was the same, really just couldn't get his hands on the footy. He came into the game a little bit later on, maybe around the fourth quarter, but the game was pretty much had the buzz taken out of it pretty early on in the fourth quarter. Tom Powell also failed to get around the ball. I did really like the work from Will Phillips. I thought he did play a really good game. Didn't get a lot of the footy, but I liked his in and under work. He was there in the clearances and his ball use is very good. I think he's quite a good user of the footy. I liked the game from Luke Parker. I thought his tackling pressure was really, really good and he did do some really nice things throughout the game as well. He looks like he's really settled nicely into our side. Colby McKercher, I thought in the second half was really, really good as well, especially when he was able to run a couple of really nice link-up passages of play. I also thought Dylan Stephens was quite good when he came onto the field. He obviously only came on late in the third quarter, but I actually really liked what he did. Saw a little bit of the footy and made the most of it when he did. So I really, really enjoyed his game. But when there are, like I said at the top, so many of your key ball winners and match winners not getting their hands on the footy, how are you going to win this game of football? So that made it really, really hard. Also, our disposal into the forward 50. So many times LDU just bombed that ball into the forward 50 and gave our forwards no chance to mark it. And that was really frustrating as well because you really felt like we were winning the ball out of the middle of the ground. We just weren't disposing of it as effectively as Adelaide were when they went the other way. So definitely room for improvement in the midfield in terms of getting the ball in the hands of the right people and then them just making the most of the opportunities when they come their way. Now let's talk about that forward line because we are looking really, really dangerous forward to the ball when we actually can deliver the ball really nicely and on the chest of our forwards. They are absolutely making the most of it. Nick Larkey is leading the Coleman, just having a really, really hot start to the season and he's on fire. He's just having and he's thriving. He's really thriving with the addition of Jack Darling. I feel like it takes a lot of pressure off him, but if he's not firing, Paul Curtis is able to have an impact. Jack Darling is not only helping Larky's game, but he's hitting the scoreboard as well. Cam Zurha, I think both Cam Zurha and Paul Curtis are probably on the quieter side as well today, but they did still contribute. They still did hit the scoreboard, and it was Jacob Constanti, like I said earlier, chipping in with 2 goals. I thought he was really, really good today. In all 3 games this year, Darling, Larky, Curtis, and Zurha have each managed to hit the scoreboard, at least 1 goal from each of those guys across all 3 games. It's at least 4 goals you're starting with a game, which I think is great because the supply is a lot bigger than it was 12 months ago when we didn't have that genuine second forward, and Darling has been able to hit the scoreboard himself as well. That's 4 goals for the season. Larky's got 12, I think now it is for the year. Zurha, Curtis, everyone's chipping in. Constanti today chipped in with 2. So it's nice. It's nice to have a really even spread. It's nice to have options. I just wish our delivery into the 450, it has killed us for so many years and it continues to do so, and until we were able to tighten that up, we are our own worst enemy once again. And that kind of was the story for the day. It's kind of been the story for 2 out of our 3 games so far this season, and you just wonder if we were able to tighten up even 30-40% how that game would have gone against the Dogs in round 1 and how today's result would have looked differently. In terms of what to take away from this game, I think we're a better side than our win-loss record would suggest this year. I think we're a better side than the way the game played out today. I think that a lot of it was our own mistakes and we are our own worst enemies, but the foundation of those mistakes, maybe 40% of it was coming from Adelaide's relentless pressure and their tackling and, like I said, their ability to capitalise on our errors, and then the 60% is just things we need to tighten up, and that will come. I have no doubt that's going to come with time, and it's good to sit here and be frustrated after a game because we know we're in control of what's going on. It's better sitting here being frustrated than we were, 8 to 12 months ago when we just felt helpless. And like you feel like you're sitting in this thing of despair and you feel like you actually can't see a way out. Whereas you're sitting here now after round 3, and I'm frustrated and I'm annoyed at what we presented today, because I know we're better than that, and I know that our best footy can put away any side pretty quickly. And last week, the performance against the D's, particularly in the fourth quarter, was an example of that. So it's nice to be sitting in these feelings for a change. It's been a really long time since I've been able to say I'm frustrated, because we are the ones who are making it hard for ourselves. But on the flip side, now the onus is on us to actually start fixing these things and to become a better side and to start building that winning culture. And I know it's going to come, and I really think that we are a good chance against the Swans next week. You guys know me, I think we're always a chance. We do have a pretty good record against the Suns under the roof at Marvel. The last time we played them there was Interchange Gate, no one forgets that, but we usually have pretty good contests with them under the roof at Marvel, and I don't think they play Marvel that well. They haven't recently, so plenty to look forward to as we look onto our game against the Swans. We've got a 6-day break, and then we will be back home at Marvel before we hit the road for Gather Round. Speaking of that game at Marvel, I'm super excited to share that I am teaming up with my very, very good friends at the True Bloods podcast, and we are putting on a massive pre-game event at Friends of Fire. That is the venue at Marvel Stadium next Saturday night. Pre-game, post-game as well. I will definitely share some more details with you later in the week. I'll catch up with the boys. I'll share it across socials. I hope to see you guys there. It's going to be so much fun. I really, really want to start bringing a bit of a community element for North Melbourne fans and start sort of building that really nice rapport. There are so many of you who have reached out to me and said that you don't have people to go to the games with, or that's often something that you've missed. So you can start there, and then you can roll on into Bay 29 and have an epic night, hopefully top it off with the North Melbourne win. Also, the Kanga TV caps, they go off pre-sale tomorrow. So you've got about 24 hours to get your orders in. Don't miss out if you do want to pick one up. All of the links are in the bio. I appreciate the support so much, you guys. It's crazy, like I said, seeing you the past couple of weeks with your Kanga TV caps, roaming around Marvel Stadium. I definitely don't take it for granted, and I'm so grateful every single day. You guys are making Kanga TV dream turn into a reality, so thank you guys so much. What did you think of today's game against the Crows? Leave all of your thoughts in the comments down below. I will try and reply to those during the week. We can keep the conversation going over on socials as well. Kanga TV Show on Instagram, X, Facebook. You can email over as well. That's all from me. Let's just park this one. We've done with round 3. We'll park it here. We'll move on. We look ahead to round 4, our game back at Marvel Stadium against the Swans on Saturday night. I'm very, very much looking forward to the build-up and a lead into this one. I will speak to you guys, no doubt, a bit later on during the week. Until then, go Roos.